Honorable Men Discord, the Minneapolis shooting. Let's talk about it.
How you see yourself is how you perceived. I see a man strong, gifted, head strapping, never down on his knees, begging. Gotta make a way, even in my darkest hour. Say the odds against me was new, I would never cower.
As always, welcome back to another episode. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and by all means, if you have something you'd like to speak about or mention, I'll see you in the comments. So let's get straight to this news report, courtesy of Fox 5 News, Washington, D.C., and then we'll talk about it further at the end.
Deadly school shooting in Minneapolis. At least 2 children, 8 and 10 years old, are dead. More than a dozen others hurt when the shooter opened fire into a Catholic church.
It is a tragic story. The FBI now investigating this attack as an act of domestic terrorism. Kenneth Moten joins us from the Fox 5 newsroom with the very latest details. Kenneth?
Angie and Sharon, the new details coming in tonight. All 14 injured children are expected to survive this shooting at Annunciation Catholic School. Students in the pews praying when shots were fired through the stained glass windows during the first mass of the new school year.
Well, we just got into mass. It was like 3 minutes after. It was very scary. It was like my friend got shot in the back. He's in the hospital right now. It was super scary because like we've never practiced it in the church. We've only practiced it in the main school. So we really didn't know what to do.
An 8 and 10-year-old were killed this morning. The 14 injured kids range in ages 6 to 15. Officials say the 3 adults hurt are parishioners in their 80s. Tonight, an intense investigation to the 23-year-old shooter who died by suicide in the back of the church. Police say Robin Westman was transgender, identifying as a woman. The suspect was allegedly armed with a rifle, shotgun, and pistol. Investigators say they were legally purchased by Westman, who had no criminal history. They're now combing through an alleged manifesto posted on YouTube in the hours before the attack. And one of the 2 videos now taken down, the suspect shows weapons and ammo. Many have phrases making threats to President Trump and asking, quote, "Where is your God?" There was a nearby vigil tonight for the victims.
These families are experiencing some acute pain right now. But don't just think of these as somebody else's kids. Think of your own. Let's make sure that we're acting now to not just say it's never happening again, but ensure it doesn't.
And a live look at the White House tonight, where flags have been lowered to half staff. They will remain there for all government buildings until sunset Sunday as a mark of respect for the victims. The FBI is now investigating the attacks as a hate crime targeting Catholics. There are reports that the suspect's mother retired from that school in 2021, but the motive still under investigation tonight. Angie.
Deadly school shooting in
All right. So they have it as a hate crime targeting Catholics. I can't say that's true. Maybe that's the nearest institution that he could find because he's from that area. But a hate crime towards Catholics per se, maybe towards Christianity. See, here's the issue that I see. First and foremost, let me explain the reason for my thumbnail. My thumbnail is a representation of this country and its love for weapons. So you have Uncle Sam with 2 firearms. One an AK-47 and the other one with a Glock 9. In the other hand, a Glock 9. And the reason why I have this is because, unfortunately for all of us, these type of things are going to continue to happen. I'll be honest with you, it wouldn't matter what politician comes forward and says they have a solution. I'm not buying it. These things are going to continue to happen because the issue here, and I had a conversation with my colleague about this, is there's just way too many guns on the streets. Right? Outside of this particular situation where it's clear there's a mental health issue out there. And the problem with that now, that's a totally different subject on its own. We live in a country. I'm not even going to speak about the world. Let's just concentrate on this country where this happened. This happened in the United States. We live in a country where there's a group of individuals, people that share the belief that, you know, how you feel is how you should be identified as. All right? Right? where am I going with this? The issue with that is that some people are not happy regardless of what they do. And this is a fact, all right? And if you disagree with me, I'm waiting in the comments for this discussion. There's a group of individuals who aren't happy as males. There's a group of individuals that's not happy as females. Now, there's a collective of people that say, well, pretty much without saying, do what makes you feel most fulfilled. So you have the males transitioning to females. You have females trying to transition to male. And then what happens most of the time? They're still not happy. It's no different than individuals who spend a lot of money on changing the way their face looks. Oh, I don't like my nose. I don't like my behind. I don't like my stomach. I don't like my abs. So on and so forth. Where am I going with this? Is that these are tell-all signs that individuals need counseling. You could disagree with me, but again, I'll see you in the comments. Keep it respectful, but explain to me how individuals that go through these different alterations are satisfied. Most of the time, individuals that go through these transitions, whether it's on a small scale, whether it's I just want to change my nose, I just want to make my breasts larger, so on and so forth. Most of the time, these individuals don't stop there. Why? Because they're never satisfied. Some people are not satisfied with the reality that they're aging. So they do all these surgeries, and as they get older and they get less compliments, then it's one of those things where, well, now I need to tighten my skin because my skin looks too loose. We live in a world where no one wants to deal with reality. And that's the biggest problem. That's part of the problem in this situation here. People don't want to deal with reality. I didn't need to know too much about this individual to know he wasn't happy. Okay? He was trying to transition. I don't know if he fully transitions to a female, but he tried to transition to a female. And what does that have to do with taking innocent lives? Because he's unhappy. In a separate news report, I saw that he mentioned, I think in a manifesto, that he's had suicidal thoughts. Why do you think he had suicidal thoughts? What do you think the connection is to the Catholic Church, if it isn't, in fact, an issue with the Catholic Church? The connection might be maybe in his past, maybe he was sexually abused. These are all possibilities. We could say it's not, but these are all possibilities. And even if he's not, even if that wasn't the case, he clearly needs counseling, regardless if he was a male or when he decided to transition to a female. He needed counseling. Mental health is not something that is necessarily a priority in this country. And if it is, and if I'm wrong on saying that, tell me where these things are readily available for people who may not be able to afford it. Because that's the next question I have. How affordable are the resources for people who need counseling? All right? This individual needed counseling. Period. This individual needed counseling. Now, as far as guns are concerned, and I'm bringing it back to when I mentioned I had a conversation with my colleague, the issue with guns, right? And I understand that some people have it for leisure. Oh, I like hunting, so I have rifles because I hunt, right? Then I understand individuals getting firearms because they're up in age. So the likelihood of them being able to fight off someone who breaks into their home is not, they're not likely to be able to defend themselves. So you get a firearm because it's like, I'm getting older. If someone was to try to break into my home, at least I have a weapon, right? Not to mention, most of the time people breaking into homes and things of that nature, they're arms. So one would think it's best that I have a weapon too, than for it to be a mismatch where someone has a weapon and I don't have a weapon. The problem with the whole weapons thing is they should have never been ready available to begin with, to criminals and even to common folk. And I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me on that, but hear me out with this. let's just say we decide as a country everyone should have equal access to a firearm. That does not make everything better. Why? Because we've seen cases where people who have qualified to have a weapon end up using it outside of what it was intended for. Perfect example, we have people in law enforcement that, due to domestic situations at home, end up using the firearm against their spouse. Now, I don't know the statistics on these things, but these things do happen. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, and it's not to target law enforcement, I'm bringing that up as one example of how someone who may have passed a psych evaluation and may meet all the criteria to have a firearm, has a firearm, and somewhere down the line may end up using it outside of the realm in which it was intended for. That's a problem. Then there's an issue of people who have firearms who may not even be able to protect themselves to hang on to the firearm. So you have people that who can possibly be robbed for their firearm, and then it puts that legal firearm now in the hands of someone who's operating illegally. More guns is not the solution, but the problem is that we're in a place right now in time where I want to say it's too late for a solution, and I'm usually an optimistic person, but it's too late for a solution at this point. Some way, somehow, way too many guns is getting in the hands of people that are operating illegally, and then I can understand why people, law-abiding citizens, are in favor of getting firearms. But the problem is, it's not an end-all solution. It's not a great solution, but I can understand why people advocate for it, because their argument would be, well, so what are we to do if all these criminals have firearms? Not everyone's equipped to have a firearm. Not everyone is responsible with a firearm. Every law-abiding citizen, if they were to have the right to have a firearm, they don't necessarily do what they're supposed to do with the firearm night in and night out. Not all people are going to have lock boxes. And you might say, I think people will be responsible. Even if you could make it a requirement that people buy lock boxes, it doesn't mean they're going to actually use it. Again, domestic issues sometimes, if there's a firearm in the household, ends up being used against a domestic partner. Again, I don't have the statistics for what I'm saying, but just hear me out in the reality of that happening. These things happen. We know plenty of situations where firearms were used by children because it was in the household. It could be the rifle that's used for hunting, but when you're off at work because your children are curious, they get their hands on the firearm. Maybe they even know where you store the ammo. These things happen. So without being too long-winded, unfortunately, the reason for my thumbnail is we're on a downhill spiral. This country's on a downhill spiral. This world is on a downhill spiral. But I'm concentrating right now in the United States. These things are not going to stop happening. I remember when Columbine was such a shock when Columbine happened. And now these things could happen on any day of the week. This thumbnail is more relevant than ever. Not just for Minneapolis, but here in New York City where I live. The Bronx has had so many shootings within the last few days, not even weeks, within the last few days, it's ridiculous. I actually had a thumbnail queued up to represent the shooting that happened in the Bronx, where an Amazon van was shot, and the worker got shot, I believe, in his foot whilst he's inside the Amazon van, because someone outside was shooting and it riddled the Amazon delivery van and he got shot. Now, to my understanding, that Amazon worker is okay. He's stable, but that's not the point. The point is there's way too many guns on the street. Aside from the fact that shootings are happening all hours of the day, there's all hours of the day, and it doesn't matter the location. This episode is no different than the one I covered about the Brooklyn Lounge shooting. All right? There's no reason why children, period, are being shot whilst they're in a place of worship. Period. Not even to say this person, and the details are still unraveling. I don't even believe this person had any type of tie to that Catholic Church. So it's not even to say the person was removed from the institution, and so they were upset and they went back to it to, cause revenge, or get revenge, I should say. Doesn't even sound like it basically sounds like it was just random. Like, I just want to do this because maybe I'm mad at God for having these emotions. And when I'm saying I'm mad at God, I'm speaking in terms of the shooter, right? It's possible the shooter lived a miserable life because they weren't sure, they were never comfortable in their skin. That's a possibility. The shooter was possibly never comfortable in his skin. It was clear that he mentioned again that he, at one point in time, was considering suicide. But how unfortunate it is that because he was suffering mentally and internally, he decided to take it out on innocent people. What's your thoughts on this topic? Weapons in general. Do you see a bright future for this country? Do you see a bright future for this world? Or are we just on a downhill spiral, as I mentioned? I believe we're on a downhill spiral. If you disagree with me, I'll see you in the comments. But unfortunately, these things won't end. And I don't see a solution for it at all. Because again, regardless if weapons are given to people legally, there's going to be a portion of those individuals that legally have firearms that at some point in time, those firearms are going to be misused. Once those guns are out in the street, they're out on the street. And they don't have to literally be in the street on the sidewalk. Once they're in the hands of people, the likelihood of those guns getting in the wrong hands are high. Because here's another reality, people. When I speak on this word reality, which is the big problem in this world and in this country, is that people are trying to avoid reality. People are avoiding the fact that they were born a boy. People are avoiding the fact that they were born a girl. People want to be coddled. There's a group of individuals that are coddling each other. Well, I feel like this, so call me this. How about you get comfortable in your own skin? And this is not a subject about gays versus people that are straight. This is about just accepting who you are and being happy with who you are. I'm not here in this episode to talk about what you do in your bedroom. I'm here to talk about being comfortable with who you are. Because this individual was not comfortable with who they are. And if you disagree with me, I'll see you in the comments. As always, just keep it respectful. All right? But back to the guns. When the guns are in the hands of legal citizens, it doesn't mean that problems won't eventually arise. Because human beings, we grow old, and eventually we all have our day where we won't be here anymore. And what happens to those weapons when they're in the house? What happens when they're in the house when no family members could come to retrieve your stuff? Who gets the firearm? Is it properly turned in to authorities? Or does someone from the moving company take the firearm? You see where I'm going with this? Just throwing guns out there just for the sake of throwing guns out there is not the solution. But we're far gone from that now. And again, I honestly believe we're on a downhill spiral. But that's all I have on this episode. As always, I appreciate everyone for tuning in. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and I'll see you in the next episode. Stay honorable.